The bustling mall in Tysons Corner Center was alive with the typical Saturday afternoon frenzy. Families and shoppers darted between brightly lit stores, their arms loaded with colorful shopping bags that swayed back and forth like clock pendulums marking the rush of time. I lingered near the crowded food court, nursing a cup of coffee that had gone cold too quickly, doing my best to fade into the background amid the chatter and clinking trays. My knee throbbed with that familiar dull pain from an old battlefield wound, a constant echo of long-ago patrols in dusty overseas terrains where every step could mean danger. Suddenly, amid the din of laughter and announcements over the speakers, a sharp, heartbreaking cry pierced through the noise, standing out like a distress signal in the chaos. I turned my head and spotted him, a small boy, probably around 5 years old, standing all by himself at the base of the escalators. His face was flushed red from crying, with big tears rolling down his chubby cheeks, and his little fists were clenched tightly around a worn-out stuffed bear that looked like it had been his constant companion. People around him barely reacted. Most just shot quick glances his way before continuing their hurried paths, too absorbed in their own worlds to stop. Then I noticed one woman in a crisp tailored blazer pausing for a split second. She furrowed her brow, as if debating whether to get involved, but then shook her head slightly and strode off without a backward glance. That confident, impatient walk was unmistakable. It was my sister Sophia. She must have seen the child too, but she didn't even hesitate or slow her pace, disappearing into the throng of shoppers as if nothing had happened. I couldn't just stand there. Setting my coffee cup down on a nearby table, I made my way over to him carefully, ignoring the sharp twinge in my knee as I knelt down to his level. I offered a warm, reassuring smile to ease his fear. "Hey there, little buddy. Are you all right? Did you get separated from your parents?" He looked up at me with wide, watery eyes, nodding slowly while wiping his nose on his sleeve. Still sniffling, he managed to stammer, "Yeah, Daddy told me to stay right here by the escalator," but I looked away for just a second to see a toy in the window, and when I turned back, he was gone. I don't know where he went. My heart went out to him. I could see the panic building in his small frame. I quickly glanced around the vast mall atrium, noting how easy it would be for anyone to get lost in this sprawling place with its multiple levels and endless corridors. "Okay, don't worry. We'll figure this out together. What's your name, kiddo?" "Tommy," he replied softly, his voice trembling a bit as he hugged his bear closer for comfort. "Nice to meet you, Tommy. My name's Quinn. I'm going to help you find your dad right now." I extended my hand gently, palm up, giving him the choice to take it. After a moment's hesitation, he reached out and grabbed it firmly, his tiny fingers wrapping around mine with surprising strength, as if I were his lifeline. We started walking hand in hand toward the mall's security desk, which I knew was located just past the central fountain. To keep his mind off the worry, I chatted lightly with him along the way. "So, tell me about your bear there. Does he have a name?" A small smile cracked through his tears. "Yeah, his name is Fuzzy. He's my best friend. He goes everywhere with me, even to bed." "That's awesome. Fuzzy looks like a brave bear. Has he ever helped you when you were scared before?" By the time we arrived at the security station, Tommy had stopped crying entirely, distracted by our little conversation. I explained the situation to the uniformed officer behind the desk, who nodded understandingly and immediately picked up his radio to activate the lost child procedure, broadcasting a description over the mall's system. It wasn't long, maybe 5 or 10 minutes, before a tall man in a neatly pressed suit came rushing toward us from the direction of the nearby department store, his face etched with pure panic. "Tommy! Oh, thank God!" "Daddy!" Tommy cried out joyfully, letting go of my hand to run straight into his father's open arms. The man lifted him up effortlessly, holding him close as waves of relief visibly washed over his features, his shoulders slumping from the release of tension. Once Tommy was secure, the father turned to me, his eyes filled with genuine gratitude and a hint of lingering stress. "Thank you so much. I only turned away for 1 second at the checkout counter to pay for something, and he vanished. Kids are so quick. It happened in a blink. I shook my head modestly. No problem at all. I'm just glad he's back safe with you where he belongs. He shifted Tommy to one arm and extended his free hand for a shake. I'm Marcus Reed, by the way. Seriously, I owe you big time. Quinn Archer, I introduced myself, meeting his firm, confident grip. There was something about his polished demeanor and the way he carried himself that struck me as oddly familiar, like I'd seen him before in a photo or on TV, but I couldn't quite pin it down in the moment. We talked for a brief minute more, with him insisting on repaying the kindness. At least let me buy you a fresh coffee or something to say thanks properly. I politely waved it off with a smile. Really, it's okay. Anyone in my position would have done the same. Just happy to help. As I finally walked away from the reunited pair, a subtle sense of warmth spread through me, cutting through the usual numbness of everyday life. After years out of the military, moments like this, simple acts of stepping up, were what chased away the lingering shadows of harder times. But I had no idea then that this ordinary encounter was about to set off a chain of events that would change everything in ways I never saw coming. That evening, as I returned to my cozy but modest one-bedroom apartment in Arlington, Virginia, I settled into my routine to unwind from the day's unexpected events. I grabbed an ice pack from the freezer and propped my leg up on the worn ottoman, letting the cold seep into the persistent ache in my knee. A stubborn souvenir from my time in the service. Lying back on the couch, I gazed up at the plain white ceiling, my mind drifting back to the incident at the mall. It was such a straightforward moment, yet it left me with a deep sense of fulfillment, like a small victory in an otherwise ordinary day. It brought back vivid memories of my military missions, where the goals were always crystal clear. Safeguard those who couldn't protect themselves, no matter the risks involved. My journey into the Army had started right after high school graduation in Fairfax, when I was just 18 years old and full of determination. My father, who had spent his entire career as a dedicated factory worker on the assembly line, couldn't have been prouder. He pulled me into a tight hug that day, his rough hands patting my back as he said with a wide grin, "Quinn, you're going to make this family stronger than ever. I'm so proud of you for stepping up like this." But my younger sister, Sophia, who was only 16 at the time and already dreaming of a glamorous life, just rolled her eyes dramatically from across the room. "Seriously, Quinn? Why would you want to play soldier and rough it out in the dirt when you could actually live a normal life, go to college, and have some fun?" she scoffed, her tone dripping with teenage sarcasm. Despite the doubts from some quarters, I threw myself into the training. I powered through basic training, building endurance and discipline that would define me. Then came Ranger School, a brutal challenge that had only recently opened its doors to women in 2015. I was among the pioneering group to complete it, earning my Ranger tab after enduring weeks of relentless physical and mental trials. Endless ruck marches with heavy packs under scorching sun or pouring rain, sleep deprivation that blurred the line between reality and exhaustion, and team exercises that tested every ounce of resilience. From there, I deployed to Afghanistan not once, but twice, leading patrols through rugged mountains and dusty villages, coordinating with local communities to gather intelligence and build alliances. Those tours were a mix of highs and heartbreaks. I saved lives by spotting threats early or pulling comrades from harm's way, but I also lost close friends to the chaos of combat, their absences leaving scars deeper than any physical wound. The turning point came during my second deployment in a routine convoy operation. An ambush hit us hard. An improvised explosive device detonated right under our vehicle, flipping it like a toy and sending shrapnel flying everywhere. A jagged piece lodged in my leg, tearing through muscle and bone. The pain was immediate and overwhelming, but training kicked in. I stayed conscious long enough to help secure the area until medevac helicopters arrived to whisk me away. That injury led to an honorable discharge at age 28, ending my active duty career earlier than I'd planned. Now, at 32, I had transitioned to civilian work as a security consultant for a firm in the D.C. area, where I trained corporate executives on assessing and mitigating threats in boardrooms rather than battlefields. The job provided a reliable paycheck and a sense of structure, but it lacked the raw adrenaline and camaraderie that had once fueled me every day. Life back home wasn't without its own battles. My relationship with my family had grown strained over the years, especially after Dad's devastating lung cancer diagnosis about a year ago. The treatments came one after another, harsh rounds of chemotherapy that left him weak and nauseous, followed by radiation sessions that burned his skin and sapped his energy. Even with basic insurance coverage, the medical bills had skyrocketed to well over $120,000, and I'd read in reliable health reports that the average cost for such extensive cancer care often hovered around $150,000 or more, depending on complications. We were managing to scrape by through careful budgeting and some community support, but the financial strain was wearing him down emotionally. During our weekly phone calls, he'd often say in a tired voice, "Quinn, I hate this. I don't want to be a burden on you girls. You've got your own lives to live." Sophia, who lived just a short drive away in a trendy condo, had carved out a successful career as a marketing executive for a high-profile firm. Her social media feeds were a constant stream of envy-inducing posts, brunches at upscale cafes, exotic vacations to beach resorts, and networking events with influencers. She did pitch in financially when she could, wiring money for Dad's prescriptions or covering a utility bill here and there, but her visits to the house were always brief and tinged with a subtle layer of criticism. "You really should have stayed in school and gotten a degree like I did, Quinn," she'd say during one of our tense conversations. "The military life is for pain seekers, endless danger and no real rewards. Look at you now, dealing with that bum knee." I never rose to the bait or argued back. The military had instilled in me the value of composure, teaching that silence in the face of provocation could be a powerful form of strength. Instead, I'd just nod and change the subject, focusing on what mattered. Yet that little boy's cry at the mall had awakened something dormant inside me, a renewed sense of purpose that I'd been missing since leaving the Army. It was a reminder that even in everyday life, there were opportunities to make a difference, no matter how small. The following morning, as I was going about my usual routine of checking emails over breakfast, my phone suddenly buzzed with an incoming call from an unknown number. I hesitated for a second before answering. "Hello, this is Quinn Archer." "Ms. Archer? Hi, this is Senator Marcus Reed calling. We met briefly at the mall yesterday when you helped my son, Tommy." The pieces clicked into place immediately, the reason he had seemed so familiar. He was a senator, a prominent figure I'd caught glimpses of on local news broadcasts, a rising political star in Virginia, in his mid-40s, known for championing bills related to veterans' affairs and family support, with a wholesome image as a devoted husband and father. "I just wanted to thank you again properly," he continued, his voice warm and sincere over the line. "Tommy hasn't stopped talking about the kind lady who found him and made him feel safe. You've really made an impression on him." I smiled to myself, touched by the update. "I'm glad to hear that. I was just doing what felt right in the moment. No big deal." We ended up chatting for a few more minutes, the conversation flowing easily. He asked about my day-to-day life and background, curious in a genuine way. When I casually mentioned my years in the Army, his tone became even more engaged. "Wait, you were a Ranger? That's truly impressive. Women like you are breaking barriers and paving the way for future generations in the military." I chuckled lightly, brushing off the praise. "Thanks, but it was a team effort all the way. I just did my part." He didn't let it drop, though. "Well, if there's ever anything I can do to return the favor, whether it's related to your service or just in general, please don't hesitate to reach out. I mean it." For a fleeting moment, my thoughts turned to Dad's mounting medical bills and the stress they were causing our family. But I pushed the idea aside quickly. True heroes don't ask for handouts. "I appreciate that, Senator, but really, no need. Take care of Tommy." As I hung up, a quiet curiosity lingered about what might come next, though I had no inkling of the profound impact this connection would soon have. Every Sunday, we gathered for dinner at Dad's modest ranch-style house in Manassas, Virginia, a long-standing family tradition that persisted despite the underlying tensions that often simmered just below the surface. The air inside was filled with the comforting aroma of roasted chicken seasoned with herbs and a generous amount of garlic, a recipe Mom had passed down before she passed away years ago. Dad positioned himself at the head of the old wooden table, looking noticeably thinner from the ongoing treatments, with his portable oxygen tank humming softly beside his chair like a constant companion. Sophia, as usual, showed up a bit late, her high heels echoing sharply against the tiled floor as she entered, her designer phone clutched in one manicured hand, probably still scrolling through work emails. Once we were all seated, Dad cleared his throat and tried to inject some positivity into the evening, his voice a little weaker than it used to be. "So how has everyone's week been treating them? Anything exciting happen?" Sophia shrugged nonchalantly, setting her phone down but not before checking one last notification. "Oh, the usual. Fine, I guess. I've been swamped with launching this big marketing campaign for a new client. Deadlines are killing me, but it's going to look great on my portfolio." I decided to share my own small anecdote from the day before, keeping it light and casual to avoid drawing too much attention. "Well, I had a bit of an adventure at the mall yesterday. I helped out this lost little kid who was wandering around crying. Everything turned out fine in the end. He got back to his dad safely." Sophia let out a sharp, derisive snort, her eyes narrowing as she leaned back in her chair. "Oh, here we go again? Playing the hero, Quinn? You and that savior complex of yours. It's like you can't help but insert yourself into every situation." I kept my tone steady and measured, not wanting to escalate things in front of Dad. "Sophia, it was just a scared, crying child standing there all alone. Anyone with a heart would have stopped to help him out." She smirked, twirling her fork idly as she replied, "Not anyone, sis. Actually, I was right there at the mall too, I saw that brat wailing his head off near the escalators. I figured mall security would swoop in and handle it like they're paid to do. But no, you just had to rush over and play the action movie star, didn't you? Always the one to save the day." Dad's face creased with a concerned frown, and he interjected gently, trying to diffuse the brewing argument. "Sophia, come on now. That's not fair." But she cut him off with a wave of her hand, her voice rising a notch in defensiveness. "What? I'm just being honest. She's always doing stuff like this, jumping into things head first. The military turned her into someone who thinks she's indispensable, like the world can't function without her stepping in." Her words hit me like a subtle jab, stirring a familiar sting of frustration. But I held my composure, drawing on the discipline I'd honed over years in uniform where losing control could cost lives. Look, it wasn't about me at all. The kid was terrified and needed anyone to step up and help. That's all there was to it. Sophia just waved it off dismissively, reaching for the serving bowl. "Whatever you say. Just pass the potatoes, will you? I'm starving." The rest of dinner dragged on slowly, the conversation feeling forced and awkward as we picked at our plates. Dad, sensing the discomfort, shifted the topic to his recent medical updates, his tone optimistic but laced with underlying worry. "The doctors say my latest scan shows things are stable for now, no major changes. But those bills, they just keep piling up, one after another." Sophia let out a long, exaggerated sigh, poking at her food. "Yeah, we'll figure it out somehow, Dad. We always do." I nodded in agreement, offering a reassuring smile, but inwardly, a quiet resentment began to build. Sophia made a solid salary in her fancy marketing job, far more than my consulting gigs. Yet her financial help came in unpredictable spurts, often after she'd splurged on the latest designer handbag or weekend getaway. I'd think to myself, designer bags before Dad's meds? Really? But I never voiced it aloud, not wanting to add more stress to his plate. After the meal, as we cleared the dishes in the cramped kitchen, Sophia cornered me by the sink, her arms crossed and her expression still smug. You know, Quinn, not every little thing in life needs your personal intervention. The world's not always a battlefield waiting for you to charge in. I rinsed a plate under the faucet, meeting her gaze calmly. Maybe you're right, but if more people actually intervened when they saw someone in need, the world might not feel so much like a battlefield in the first place. She let out a short, dismissive laugh, shaking her head as she turned away. Keep dreaming, sis. Not everyone's cut out for your kind of drama. As I drove home later that evening along the quiet suburban roads, her mocking words echoed in my mind like an unwelcome refrain. Playing hero. It twisted something inside me, making a simple act of kindness feel like a character flaw in her eyes. Little did I know, fate was already weaving a different narrative, one that would soon turn the tables in unexpected ways. About a week after the mall incident, as I was sorting through my inbox at my desk job, an unexpected email popped up from Senator Marcus Reed's official office account. The subject line read, "Invitation to Veterans Appreciation Event." The message was polite and personal. "Dear Ms. Archer, we would like to extend a special invitation to you for a small gathering we're hosting to honor local veterans in our community. Your remarkable service record, combined with the kindness you showed to my son Tommy, has inspired him to ask endless questions about the military. It would mean a lot if you could join us and share a few words." I stared at the screen for a moment, feeling a wave of reluctance wash over me. Public events like this, with spotlights and crowds, had never been my comfort zone. They brought back uncomfortable flashbacks to military award ceremonies, where I'd stand at attention in my uniform, forcing a stoic expression while my injured knee screamed in silent protest from the strain. The idea of being center stage again made my stomach twist. But when I mentioned it to Dad over the phone that evening, he didn't hesitate to push me forward. "Quinn, mija, you have to go," he said, his voice warm but firm despite the rasp from his treatments. "This is a chance to represent not just yourself, but all of us, our family, the sacrifices we've made. Make me proud, like you always do." His words swayed me, and a few days later, I found myself at the community center in Alexandria, a quaint venue with folding chairs arranged in neat rows and American flags fluttering gently from stands along the walls. The crowd was modest, maybe 50 or 60 people, including fellow veterans, local officials, and families, creating an intimate atmosphere rather than an overwhelming one. Senator Reed took the podium first, his suit impeccable as he delivered a heartfelt speech about the unsung heroes in everyday life, emphasizing how veterans continue to contribute long after their tours end. Then, to my surprise, he called me forward. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Quinn Archer, a decorated Army Ranger veteran who not only bravely served our country in challenging deployments, but also helped my young son when he became lost at the mall." The room erupted in warm applause, hands clapping steadily as I made my way to the front, my heart pounding but my steps steady from years of training. I kept my remarks brief and to the point, speaking into the microphone with a calm voice. "Thank you, Senator. Service to this country doesn't stop when you hang up the uniform. It's a lifelong commitment. For me, it's about giving back to the community in whatever way I can, big or small." As the event wrapped up and people mingled with coffee and cookies, Reed approached me privately, pulling me aside to a quieter corner near the exit. "Quinn, I wanted to give you this personally," he said, handing over a folded piece of construction paper. It was a colorful crayon drawing from Tommy, a stick-figure woman in a green uniform, complete with a badge, holding a fluffy bear in one arm. He spent all afternoon on it. Said it's the hero lady who saved me. I unfolded it carefully, a genuine smile breaking across my face. It was adorably simple, yet it touched me deeper than I anticipated, reminding me of the innocent impact one act could have. "This is really sweet. Tell Tommy thank you from me. It means a lot." We ended up chatting for a good 10 minutes, the conversation flowing naturally. He asked about my life after the military, curious about the challenges of transitioning to civilian work. I opened up a bit, mentioning my security consulting role, and vaguely the family struggles. It's been an adjustment for sure. My dad's battling lung cancer right now, and the medical bills, they're pretty tough to manage, even with everything we've tried. His expression sharpened with immediate concern, his brows furrowing as he nodded thoughtfully. I'm sorry to hear that. Families of veterans shouldn't have to fight those kinds of battles on top of everything else. Let me look into some resources. I know a few foundations that specialize in this. I shook my head quickly, not wanting to impose. Oh no, really, Senator. There's no need to go out of your way. We're handling it. But he placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder, his tone insistent yet kind. Nonsense, Quinn. After what you did for Tommy and for your service to this country, it's the absolute least I can do. Consider it a small way to pay it forward. True to his word, just a few days later, my phone rang with a call from one of his aides, a efficient-sounding woman named Carla. Ms. Archer, we've connected your father's case with a reputable foundation focused on medical debt relief for military families. Senator Reed personally reached out to expedite things. They're reviewing the details now, but it looks promising. I was absolutely stunned, sitting down heavily on my couch as I processed her words. From what I'd researched, the average costs for advanced cancer treatments like Dad's could easily cripple a family financially, often exceeding $100,000 even after insurance kicked in. This intervention could potentially wipe out a huge chunk of that burden, giving us breathing room we desperately needed. When I broke the news to Dad over dinner that weekend, his eyes welled up with tears, something I hadn't seen from him in years. How on earth did this happen, Quinn? It's like a miracle dropped from the sky. I hugged him tightly, keeping my explanation simple. Just some good luck, Dad, and maybe a little help from the right people. But Sophia's reaction was the complete opposite. During our next phone call, as I casually mentioned the update, she exploded in a rush of anger and disbelief. Wait, you seriously used your little hero act at the mall to schmooze a freaking senator? That's pathetic, Quinn. Turning a random good deed into some networking opportunity for handouts. I sighed, trying to keep my voice level. Sophia, I didn't ask for anything. It just came up in conversation, and he offered to help. That's all. Right, sure, she shot back sarcastically. Playing hero finally pays off for you. Must be nice to have all that glory fall into your lap while the rest of us actually work for what we get. Her jealousy was boiling over, raw and unchecked, twisting the situation into something ugly. If only she could see the full picture, that this wasn't about me winning some game, but about genuine kindness rippling out in ways no one could predict. The wave of relief washed over us faster than I could have imagined. The foundation Senator Reed had connected us with, one supported by several prominent veteran organizations dedicated to easing the burdens on former service members and their families, dove right into reviewing Dad's medical records and financial statements. They moved efficiently, cross-checking everything from hospital invoices to insurance claims. Within just a few short weeks, official notifications started arriving in the mail and via email. The debts were being forgiven, piece by piece. In total, more than $140,000 in outstanding bills vanished, covering everything from the grueling chemotherapy sessions to the ongoing radiation treatments and specialist visits. For Dad, it meant he could finally breathe a little easier, both figuratively and literally, without the constant weight of financial worry pressing down on his already fragile health. When I shared the final confirmation with him over a quiet lunch at his house, his face lit up in a way I hadn't seen since before his diagnosis. Quinn, this is like a miracle straight from heaven, he said, his voice cracking with emotion as he pulled me into a tight hug, his thin arms wrapping around me with surprising strength. I was starting to think we'd never get out from under this mountain of debt. How can I ever thank you for making this happen? Not long after, my phone rang with a personal call from Senator Reed himself, his number now saved in my contacts. Quinn, I just heard the good news from the foundation, he said warmly. I'm truly glad it all worked out. You more than deserve this after everything you've given in service to our country." I thanked him over and over, my words tumbling out in gratitude. "Senator, I can't express how much this means to my family. It's changed everything for us. Dad can focus on his recovery now without the stress." During that conversation, I learned more about him beyond the public persona. He'd been elected to the Senate back in 2022, riding a wave of support for his strong stance on healthcare reform, particularly expanding access for underserved communities. Tommy, his energetic 5-year-old, was his only child. Born into a demanding life where Reed constantly juggled the high-stakes world of Capitol Hill politics with family responsibilities like school pickups and bedtime stories. "Your personal story really hits home for me," he continued thoughtfully. "It's a reminder of why I push so hard for veterans' issues in Congress. Women in special operations like the Rangers face all sorts of extra hurdles. Things like institutional sexism that questions your capabilities, or even basic equipment that's designed primarily for men, leading to improper fits and higher injury risks. And yet, trailblazers like you not only survive but thrive, setting examples for everyone." I'd come across those very issues in various Army reports and studies I'd read over the years. Detailed analyses highlighting blatant biases in elite units, where gear like body armor or backpacks often didn't accommodate women's builds, contributing to preventable injuries. My own knee problem, stemming from that ill-fitted ruck during a long march, was a perfect, painful example of how those systemic flaws could have lasting consequences. This unexpected help didn't just erase numbers on a balance sheet, it fundamentally shifted the tide for our family, bringing a sense of stability and hope that had been missing for too long. We could now afford small comforts, like better home care for Dad, or even a family outing without guilt. Sophia, on the other hand, was anything but relieved. We met up for coffee at a small cafe near her office a couple of days later, and the moment we sat down with our lattes, her frustration funneled over. She leaned in across the table, her eyes flashing with accusation. "I can't believe this, Quinn. You totally manipulated that senator with your sob story about Dad's cancer and your heroic military past. How else do you explain all this debt magically disappearing?" I set my cup down calmly, meeting her gaze. "Sophia, I swear I didn't ask for a thing. We were just talking after the event, and when I mentioned Dad's situation in passing, he offered to look into it on his own. It wasn't some scheme." "Right, of course," she retorted sarcastically, stirring her drink aggressively. "Playing the hero yet again. And look, it pays off big time. Must be nice to have powerful people falling over themselves to help you while the rest of us grind away." Her jealousy was palpable, twisting her words into sharp barbs, but beneath it, I sensed a deeper hurt. If only she could grasp the full picture, that this wasn't about competition or glory, but about a chain of genuine kindness leading to real change. It all started innocently enough, but the security footage from the mall exploded across social media like a wildfire raging out of control. What began as an internal review by Tysons Corner Center's security team, standard procedure for any lost child incident, quickly leaked online, perhaps tipped off by an employee who recognized Senator Reed's involvement. By the next morning, the clip was everywhere, shared on X with trending hashtags like Lost Child Hero and How Heartless Bystander, reposted on TikTok with dramatic music overlays, and even picked up by local news channels for evening segments. Within just a few days, it racked up over 5 million views, spreading virally as people tagged friends and debated in comment sections. The video itself was crystal clear, captured from multiple high-definition mall cameras overlooking the escalators. It opened with little Tommy standing alone, his small body shaking as tears streamed down his face, clutching his stuffed bear while calling out weakly for his dad. Shoppers hurried by, some glancing curiously but none stopping, until a sharp focus on Sophia in her distinctive blazer. The footage showed her pausing briefly, her expression one of mild annoyance as she looked directly at the crying boy, then shaking her head and striding away without a single word or gesture of concern. Seconds later, I entered the frame, kneeling down gently to comfort him, talking softly until he calmed. The online backlash was immediate and intense. Comments flooded in by the thousands. "What kind of monster ignores a terrified, crying child like that? Unbelievable," one user wrote. Another added, "Shout out to the woman who actually helped. That's a real hero. The Blazer lady should be ashamed." And plenty more piled on. This is why society is broken. People too self-absorbed to help a kid in need. Karma's coming. It reminded me of those real-life viral shaming cases I'd seen before. Like social experiments on YouTube where actors pose as lost children in public spaces. For instance, a 2014 video from London showed over 600 passers-by ignoring a distressed little girl on the street, sparking global outrage and discussions about bystander apathy. Or a 2019 clip where people walked past a crying child in a similar setup, leading to millions of views and heated debates about human decency. Sophia's indifferent hurry in the video fit right into that narrative, amplifying the public shaming. My phone rang late that night. It was Sophia, her voice high-pitched and frantic, bordering on hysteria. "Quinn, this is a nightmare. The video is everywhere online. My boss just texted me about it, saying it doesn't look good for the company. 2 clients have already canceled meetings, and my inbox is blowing up with hate mail." What the hell is going on? I had just finished watching the clip myself for the 3rd time, noting how the mall's crisp, multi-angle footage left no room for doubt or editing tricks. When news outlets reached out, Tysons Security even confirmed its authenticity in a brief statement, explaining it was released to highlight child safety awareness, but admitting the leak was unauthorized. "How did this even happen? Who leaked it?" she demanded, her breathing ragged over the line. I sighed, trying to stay calm for her sake. "I'm not sure, but probably someone at the mall recognized Senator Reid after the story got out. He's a public figure, Sophia. Things like this can snowball quickly when a politician's involved." On screen, her face captured that moment of cold indifference, her hurried steps away from the child, painting her as the epitome of entitlement. Her Instagram account, once a curated showcase of her perfect life, was now inundated with vicious trolls. "Heartless witch. Hope karma hits you hard. How do you sleep at night ignoring a kid like that?" She switched her profile to private mode within hours, but the damage was already irreversible. Screenshots circulated endlessly. Local news stations jumped on the story, running dramatic segments with titles like "Senator's Son Rescued by Veteran Hero," "Bystanders' Shocking Neglect Caught on Camera and Goes Viral." Reporters dissected the footage, interviewing child psychologists about the dangers of ignoring lost kids and praising acts of kindness in public spaces. Senator Reid's office responded with a measured press release. "We are deeply grateful to the compassionate veteran who assisted our son during a brief moment of separation. Her quick actions exemplify community spirit. We have no further comment on other individuals in the video and ask for privacy as we focus on family." Sophia withdrew into isolation after that, barely leaving her apartment and dodging calls from friends. Dad called me the next day, his voice heavy with concern. "I saw the video too, Quinn. Poor Sophia. She's not handling this well. But you know, this will pass eventually. These internet storms always do." He was right in theory, but for Sophia, the sting of public humiliation burned deep, a harsh spotlight on a split-second choice that now defined her to millions. The doorbell rang unexpectedly late one evening, jolting me from my quiet routine of reviewing work emails on the couch. I opened the door to find Sophia standing there, her usually flawless makeup smudged, her eyes red and puffy from what looked like hours of crying. She pushed past me without a word, her shoulders tense with anger. "Quinn, you did this. You leaked that footage, didn't you? Just to spite me and make me look like the villain." I closed the door softly behind her, keeping my voice calm despite the accusation. "Sophia, I swear I had nothing to do with it. The video leaked on its own, Probably some mall employee or online sleuth who spotted the senator's connection and shared it for clicks. I wouldn't do that to you, no matter how frustrated I've been. She began pacing back and forth across my living room floor, her heels clicking sharply against the hardwood, her hands gesturing wildly. My life is completely ruined because of this. My job's hanging by a thread. My boss called me into a meeting today, saying the company's image is at stake. Clients are pulling out left and right, and my so-called friends? They're ghosting me, not even replying to my texts. How am I supposed to fix this? A pang of sympathy hit me hard. Despite all our differences and her constant jabs, she was still my sister, my family through thick and thin. I motioned for her to sit, but she kept moving. Listen, it'll blow over eventually. These viral storms come and go. People have short memories online. In a few weeks, something else will grab their attention. She stopped pacing abruptly and shook her head, her voice breaking. Not when it's tied to a high-profile senator like Reed. This isn't just some random clip. It's national news now. Everyone's painting me as this heartless monster. And why does it always have to be you? Why do you always end up getting the glory, the praise, the happy endings? I sat down across from her on the armchair, leaning forward to meet her eyes. Sophia, it's not about glory or winning some competition. I helped that little boy because it was the right thing to do in that moment. He was scared and alone, and no one else was stepping up. You could have done the same. You were right there. She finally collapsed onto the couch, burying her face in her hands for a moment before looking away toward the window. I know. I was running late for an important client meeting, and my mind was racing with deadlines. I saw him crying, but I didn't really think about it. I just assumed someone else would handle it, like security or another shopper. I nodded gently, choosing my words carefully. That's exactly the point, though. Thinking about others in those split seconds matters. It could have been anyone helping, but ignoring it, well, the video captured that, and now it's forcing all of us to reflect. We ended up talking for hours that night, the conversation shifting from defensiveness to raw honesty as the evening wore on. Her long-held jealousy poured out in waves, how she resented my exciting adventures in the military, traveling the world and earning medals, while she ground away at corporate ladders, climbing rung by rung in a cutthroat office environment. She admitted ignoring Dad's quiet pleas for us to support each other more, always prioritizing her career over family time. I mocked you all those times because it hurt so much seeing you shine without even trying, she confessed softly, her voice trembling as tears welled up again. You were out there being this hero, and I felt like I was just ordinary, stuck in meetings and spreadsheets. The viral video, as brutal as it was, had become a catalyst for real reflection. Public shaming like that was harsh and unforgiving, but it could also be eye-opening. Much like those other infamous viral incidents I'd seen online, a bar security guard overreacting to a minor issue and facing job loss, or entitled shoppers caught on camera berating store employees only to have their behavior dissected by millions. By the end of the week, Sophia took a brave step and posted a public apology on her social media accounts, now carefully managed to filter out the trolls. I deeply regret not stopping to help that lost child when I had the chance, she wrote. It was a moment of selfishness, and I've learned a hard lesson about compassion and paying attention to those around us. Thank you to everyone for the feedback. I'm committed to doing better. The intense backlash began to ease slightly after that, with some commenters offering forgiveness and others moving on to newer scandals. But for Sophia, the core lesson had sunk in deep, changing how she saw herself and our family dynamics in ways that no argument ever could. Several months slipped by quietly after the viral uproar, bringing a sense of calm and renewal to our lives. Dad's health finally stabilized, free from the crushing weight of those medical bills, which lifted his spirits in ways we hadn't seen in years. He even took up gardening again in the backyard, planting rows of tomatoes and herbs with careful hands, small, everyday victories that symbolized his growing strength and optimism. Feels good to get my hands dirty for something positive, he'd say with a chuckle during our visits. Sophia underwent a noticeable transformation during this time. She started coming over more frequently, not just for quick check-ins, but for real quality time, helping out without anyone having to ask. One evening at Dad's house, as we sat around the dinner table finishing a home-cooked meal of lasagna and salad, she set her fork down and looked at me directly. "Quinn, I need to say this. I'm truly sorry for all the mockery and the snide comments I threw your way over the years. I was wrong to call you out for playing hero. The truth is, you weren't pretending. You really are one, in every sense." I reached across the table and squeezed her hand, offering a warm smile. "Thank you, Sophia. That means a lot coming from you. But at the end of the day, we're family, and that's what matters most. We don't need heroes among us, just support and understanding." Adding to the positive momentum, Senator Reid extended an invitation to our whole family for a charity fundraiser he was hosting in D.C., focused on supporting veterans and their loved ones. When we arrived at the elegant venue, Tommy spotted me right away and ran over, wrapping his small arms around my legs in an enthusiastic hug. "Quinn, you're my absolute favorite soldier ever," he exclaimed, his eyes wide with admiration as he looked up at me. The event itself spotlighted initiatives for veteran debt relief, with speakers sharing inspiring stories of resilience. I was asked to speak briefly, and I chose to share our family's experience anonymously, focusing on how one small act of kindness had snowballed into life-changing help. My words seemed to resonate, inspiring a wave of generous donations from the attendees that night. As life gradually settled into a more peaceful rhythm, my old knee injury still throbbed on rainy days, a persistent reminder of my past, but I rediscovered a renewed sense of purpose that had been missing. I began volunteering at local veteran centers, leading workshops for women transitioning out of the military, sharing personal tales of overcoming institutional bias, ill-fitting gear that led to unnecessary injuries, and the quiet resilience needed to push through it all. Sophia, meanwhile, worked diligently to rebuild her professional reputation, shifting her marketing focus toward campaigns that emphasized empathy and community impact. The intense viral storm eventually faded into the background, as online scandals often do, but the lessons it left in its wake only strengthened our family bonds, teaching us about forgiveness and growth. In those quiet, reflective moments, perhaps while sitting on my apartment balcony watching the sunset, I often thought back on how a single act of kindness had rippled outward like a stone tossed into a pond. It exposed the hidden fractures in our relationships, but more importantly, it forged new, stronger connections. There was never any intent for revenge. It was simply the truth coming to light in its own time. To anyone reading this story, if you ever spot a need right in front of you, don't hesitate to act. Do it not for applause or recognition, but simply because it's the right thing to do. Families can heal and grow closer when we set aside our pride and egos. And remember, sometimes the most significant battles aren't fought on distant fields, but won right at home, with open hearts and a willingness to understand one another.